So today we'll be talking about introduction to ethical hacking. So we've talked about SOC, we've talked about digital forensics, talked about GRC. So today we'll be talking about ethical hacking. All right, so what is hacking? Now, hacking is the process of exploring, probing, or manipulating computers, networks, and software. Now, historically, it meant clever technical problem solving. Today, it's commonly used to mean both unauthorized intrusion and authorized security testing. Now, context matters. The same techniques can be used by attackers, which is a malicious attack, or defenders, which are known as ethical hackers. So normally, hacking is a process of trying to explore and manipulate computers, networks, and software. So the way you go about those manipulations is known as hacking. That is just the simple definition. Now we have types of hackers. Now we have the white hat hackers, which are the ethical hackers. Now they work with permission to find and fix security issues. So we have pen testers, we have security researchers. Now what white hackers do is that they hack based on permission. An organization employs their services to come and check where they are vulnerable, and they sign agreements. That is what we call white hat hacker. Then we have the black hat hackers. Now these ones conduct illegal activities for personal gain, disruption, espionage, etc. So the black hat hackers, these ones have illegal intent of hacking. Then we have the gray hat hackers. Now they fall between white hats and black hats. Now they may probe systems without permission and later disclose findings. That is, the gray hat hackers, they hack without permission, but not for harmful intent. That is just the difference. Then we have script kiddies. Now, these are inexperienced users who run existing tools without deep understanding. Now, script kiddies, those that fall under script kiddies are people that use scripts, malicious scripts or malwares without even knowing what they are meant for. Their own is that they downloaded a script online and they sent to you and it worked and they're able to achieve whatever they wanted to achieve with it. They don't know if the script doesn't work. They don't know what to do. They don't really know much about it. So those are people that fall under the category of script kiddies. Then we have the nation state actors. Now these ones are highly resourced, target critical infrastructure, intelligence, or geopolitical goals. Now the nation state actors, these ones are hackers working for different countries. You understand? So these are hackers working for different countries that target infrastructures and also geopolitical goals. Then we have common attacker motivations. Now, one of the motivations why people really want to hack or attack is number one, financial gain. That is for fraud, ransomware. You all know what ransomware is, whereby you encrypt someone's data and ask them to pay ransom to decrypt it. Then we have espionage, that is for commercial and political reasons. The next one is disruption, that is sabotage or activism. Now, activism are those that, I don't know, there was a time Anonymous was trending. There was a time a group called Anonymous was trending. What they do is just try to expose political leaders that have been corrupt. That's an example of activism. Then we have prestige / challenge. Now, some security researchers actually want to challenge themselves, want to know what is trending, want to know the latest trends. That's another reason why people want to attack. Then you have political or social goals also. So another reason is for political and social goals. Now we have high-level attack categories. Now these are some, I said high-level attack categories. Now these are descriptions only. So the first one is social engineering. Now this is a way of manipulating people through phishing or pretexting rather than breaking technical controls. So one of the ways or attack categories is actually social engineering. Is one of the ways that hackers mostly use because it's just for you to be able to manipulate uh your victim or your just for you to be able to manipulate, then you gain access. A lot of you must have experienced social engineering whereby somebody will call you and they say they are from your bank. They know your details, they have this one, they have that one. They say we should send them the OTP. I know a lot of you have sent OTP because we want to use 100 naira to collect 1 billion. But it is well. That is an example of social engineering. The next one is web application attacks. Now, exploiting vulnerabilities in web applications. Example, authentication flaws, input validation issues. So they also exploit vulnerabilities in web applications. All these websites you visit, some of them have vulnerabilities that can be exploited. So one thing hackers do is that they help find these vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. So we have network attacks. So intercepting, redirecting, or spoofing a network traffic. That is, you have the man in the middle concepts. You also have traffic interception as a concept. So this is network attack. So they try to intercept your network or redirect you to a different network or spoof your network. Spoofing your network is trying to be your network saying I am this person, which you're actually not. And you have system exploitation. So using vulnerabilities in operating systems to gain unauthorized access. Then we have credential attacks. So stealing or guessing usernames and passwords. That is exploiting weak password or leaked credentials. Then we have malware or ransomware. So software designed to damage, encrypt, or exfiltrate data. So that's that. Then we have denial of service. I think I've explained this several times. So overwhelming resources to disrupt availability. Then we have supply chain attacks. So exploiting third-party components or vendors to reach targets indirectly. Now, this one is actually a little bit deep. So what people do, what some hackers do is that, okay, they cannot reach you, but at least they can reach a third-party application that you use. For instance, now somebody wants to get access to someone. Now you want to get access to a website. Now you don't know, you are unable to penetrate the website, but you know the server that the website is being hosted on. You can penetrate the website, the server to get to the website. So that's what they mean by third party. Or probably somebody wants to get to you and the person cannot get to you easily, but the person knows a website that you normally visit. So the person can exploit the website that you visit just to get to you, to the target indirectly. That's what supply chain attacks mean. So we have the legal and ethical fundamentals. Now, the first one is always get written authorization before testing systems you do not own. So it is very important that before you perform any test on any systems that is not your own, always get written authorizations. Unauthorized access is legal in many jurisdictions. So if you are trying to penetrate a system that you do not have access on, it is very illegal and could land you in trouble. Now use a defined scope, that is time frame and rules of engagement for any authorized test. So in agreements, there's always a time frame, that is between a certain period. You tell them the period you want to use to perform the penetration testing. So there are rules of engagement. If you find a particular vulnerability, or if you find a particular sensitive data, you should not expose those data. So there are so many rules of engagement that you would have between you and your client. Another one is you should not there's when you are reporting, there are people you don't report to. You understand? There are some things when you see those things, or when you actually see those data, you have to always keep them secret. Next one is responsible disclosure. Now, coordinate with owners when reporting vulnerabilities. Never publish POCs. POCs is proof of concepts. What do you mean by proof of concept? Is your screenshot of how you found the vulnerability, what you did, and all that. So that is your POC that facilitates immediate abuse without mitigation plans. So never publish POCs that does not have a mitigation plan yet. You understand? The next one is understand local laws, computer misuse, privacy, and organizational policies. So this one too is very important. Depending on the country that you are performing your penetration test on, different countries have their own laws that guide systems, or they guide the hacking world. So always try to understand local laws also. Then we have the ethical hacking methodology. So from recon to report. So these are the stages, or these are the steps of ethical hacking. So now the first one is planning and reconnaissance. So planning and reconnaissance is just a way of you trying to understand your target, trying to gather information about your target. That is what they call planning and reconnaissance. So understand scope, rules of engagement, gather public information. So that is what reconnaissance means. So you have to be able to understand your target. Okay, this particular target you want to perform a penetration testing on, what are the things that were used to build up these particular targets? So that is what we call planning and reconnaissance. Then the next stage is scanning and enumeration. Now you have to identify live hosts, open ports, services, and versions. So we all know that how your network communicates is through IP address, port numbers, and MAC addresses. So you need to be able to scan to know which hosts, to know your hosts, know the ports that are open that you want to even communicate with, know the services that are running on that your target, then also know the versions you are using, because versions too matter. What an attack that will work for version 1.0 might not work for version 2.0, because they might have actually patched up the vulnerability in that 1.0. That's one of the essence of patching up your system, that is updating. So the next stage is vulnerability analysis. Now map identified services to known vulnerabilities and prioritize targets. So you need to be able to map identified services to the vulnerability that you've been able to find out to prioritize your target. Then next one is exploitation. So safely validate vulnerabilities, non-destructive when required. So you need to be able to safely validate that this vulnerability is actually exploitable. That's that. Then we have post-exploitation. Now document access, determine impact, avoid persistence unless authorized. So after you've been able to get the exploitation, so you document your assets. That is why I told you that in cybersecurity, one of the key skills you must be able to have, or you must have, you don't have a choice, is documentation, because you have to be able to document. The next one is reporting and remediation. So you deliver clear findings, risk ratings, reproduction steps and remediation, that is how they were able to mitigate against that particular vulnerability that you have been able to discover. So we have common tools and lab setup. So set up an isolated lab environment, use virtualization like VirtualBox or VMware, and target VMs. So if you guys have done that already, you set up your VMware. So any machine that you want to target, you make sure you install them on your VM. So be it Windows, be it Metasploitable framework, be it Parrot operating system. Just make sure that everything you target, so that you will not destroy your hosts. Everything you target should be on a VM, because anything that destroys on a VM would not affect your main system. So now some of those tools, we have Metasploitable, we have DVWA, we have OWASP, and we have Multilide. Now, Metasploitable is a framework that is used for trying to emulate hacking or emulate attacks. You understand? Whether network attack, system attack. So it is a framework that is used to emulate that kind of attack. Then we have DVWA. DVWA has to do with free websites that you can attack when you are performing a website vulnerability, so that you don't attack real websites. So DVWA gives you a free website that you can actually perform your test on. Then we also have the OWASP, same thing, does the same thing on websites. Multilide too does the same thing on websites. Now it helps you to be able to practice safely. So now common tools, we have Nmap. So Nmap is used for network scanning and host discovery. We'll be seeing how that works. Then we have Wireshark. Wireshark/TCP dump. I've taught you this. So packet capture and traffic analysis. So we have Metasploit framework, so exploitation and payload management. Next one is Bob Suite. So whether community or professional version. So now this is a web proxy for testing web application. So Bob Suite is an application for testing websites. It's used to perform penetration testings on websites, because on Bob Suite you can intercept your traffic with Bob Suite. Then we have SQL. So this is SQL, automated SQL injection testing. So SQL stands for structured query language. So it is a coding language used for databases. So what SQL injection means is an hacker trying to manipulate your coding language for your database just to get information from your database. A database is where the information about anything you do, whether on a website or on a network, is stored. For instance, every website you visit, your username and your password, your details, your name, everything you set on that website is actually being stored in a database. And the database, the language that was used to code that database, is known as SQL. So what SQL injection means is that an attacker trying to manipulate the codes that were used to code that database to try and get information from that database, whether name, card number, or any information he or she could lay hands on, username and passwords and all that. So that's what SQL injection means. Then we have Nikto. So this is a web server scanning. So it's used to scan web servers. So we have OpenVAS. This is for vulnerability scanning. We have OpenVAS, we have Nexus. So it's used for vulnerability scanning. It's used to scan targets to check the vulnerabilities. So we have Hashcat and John the Ripper. Now this is for password cracking. So most of all these tools actually come pre-installed in your Kali. So John the Ripper is used for password cracking. That's what they use in cracking password. The way it works is that because most passwords are saved in hashes, so John the Ripper, if you give it those hashes, it could actually try its best to translate those hashes to your password. And the way it does that is it runs through something we call a dictionary. Now, a dictionary is a list of a list of, that's another attack. They call it a dictionary attack. So a dictionary is a list of possible passwords that might have actually been created. So those possible passwords would have been changed into hash values. Now, what John the Ripper now does is that it tries to run your hash value through the hash values that is inside that dictionary. And to perform things like this, most time your system has to be very, very strong, because the rate at which your PC will be working when you are using John the Ripper, you have got the fear, say, hope this system no go explode. So that's why most times hackers, their gadgets are usually top notch, so that they can have a fast way of doing things. So these are some of the commands that are used. So we have call, we have netcat, we have sudo, we have Python 3, and we have git. All right. So now reconnaissance. So we have two types of reconnaissance. We have passive reconnaissance and we have active reconnaissance. Now, passive reconnaissance, from the word passive, something that just passes by, that you might not, you don't really notice. It's just an information that you have out there. For instance, now maybe somebody is your friend on Facebook, and the person is checking your except for other what do you call it? Except for other social media platforms that actually alerts you when someone is checking your details. But for those that don't alert, you know that is a passive. For instance, the person is just checking your social media accounts to see what you like. You understand? Checking some things that you don't even know the person is checking. That's an example of a passive reconnaissance. So collect information without directly contacting the target. Sources include like the what do you call it? Like who is checking the records of a domain. So we have DNS records, we have social media, so we have search engines through Google Docking or your Google. We have subdomain enumeration, trying to check a subdomain. Now, the next one is active reconnaissance. So this one directly queries the target. For instance, when we ping, if you ping google.com, if you're pinging, if you live for instance, if you are pinging on Kali, it goes non-stop until you stop it. Now, if you ping google.com, if you leave it there for a long while, they will block that your IP address, because pinging is a way of sending a SYN request, or a request, using your IP to send requests to Google server that you want to connect. That is what pinging is. But if you overdo it, because most times what pinging is used for is for you to just know if that particular server or particular IP address or particular domain is actually responsive, or you can communicate with it. But if it gets too much, they will flag your IP address, because it might show a sign of a DOS attack, because that is how a DOS attacks actually happen. But the ping they use for a DOS attack is not just the normal ping. There's another ping they use for it, because that one sends more requests than just the normal ping. You understand? So if you ping, I'd not say you should try it though, because if they blacklist your IP address, that's not on me. So if you ping google.com for a long time, so that's to show you that they're actually seeing it. So it is an active reconnaissance. It is no longer passive. When you do port scannings too, depending on what the server has been set, the way the server has been set up, they might actually know that you are performing those activities, because it is a direct query to your target. You understand? We have banner grabbing. So some of the methods and commands that I use for the DNS enumeration, we have the dig command. So dig command helps you to know the IP addresses of the public IP addresses of that particular domain. So we have hosts, it helps you to check the host targets. Then we have DNS enum2. That is another command. So for subdomain recovery, we have the sublister. I think I made use of sublister in one of our trainings. Then we also have the OSync tools. So Google Docking, you have LinkedIn, you have GitHub, and all that. So now scanning and enumeration. So We use nmap to find live hosts and open ports. Example, nmap, then these parameters, then what we end it will be your IP address. So we have service enumeration. Now connect to services, read banners, check versions, and also map to. So we have vulnerabilities. Use tools like enum for Linux, SMB clients, Nikto. Now these are tools that are used on web servers to know the kind of web server that is hosting the website. So we also have port scanning tips. So respect rate limits, performing timing adjustments when testing. So post-exploitation and evidence collection. So post-exploitation focuses on understanding the impact of a successful compromise. So having access to data. So lateral movement. Lateral movement has to do with after you've gained access into a network, your movement inside the network is known as lateral movement. So we have movement potential. So we have privilege escalation, and we have exfiltration risk. So exfiltration is trying to move data away from that network. That's what we call exfiltration. Now we have document everything. So you have to document everything, the commands you use, the timestamps, the obtained artifacts. Artifacts are like the probably the softwares that was made use of or that you were able to discover. Those are called artifacts. Then evidence and evidence files. So now screenshots and saved output. So your screenshots should be your POC. So we also have do not make persistent changes, that is backdoors, new users, unless explicitly authorized. So these are some of the things you must take into consideration when you are collecting evidences. Now, web application hacking essentials. So web app are common targets. Focus areas include authentication flaws, injection. We have the SQL, we have the LDAP, we have the XSS. I think I explained SQL before. So XSS is cross-site scripting. So cross-site scripting has to do with JavaScript. You know, the way what makes your website respond to you when you click on come, it takes you, or when you click on go, it takes you to what you need to do is the use of JavaScript. So just like the SQL is used to try to manipulate the database coding to get information from the database, while cross-site scripting, which is XSS, is trying to manipulate the JavaScript that was used in creating the website to try to trick the website to do what you want it to do. Then we have CSRF. I think that's cross-site request and forgery. So what CSRF is that, so we have insecure direct objection references, which is an IDOR attack also. So what CSRF attack is like is, for instance, when you visit, each website have something we call a CSRF token, which validates that you are the one visiting that website at that particular time. So what a CSRF or IDOR attack is like is that what an attacker does is that, for instance, let's say we both have accounts with a particular website, probably let's say a bank. Now, in my own account as an attacker, what I do is I log into my account. Now I could go to my change password section. Now I will do as if I want to change my password on my own account. So I put in my password and I click on change. Now I will capture the HTML or the let me say the CSRF token of that process. Now, then I'll try and server that request up on probably on a server that I'll create on my own. Now I'll send it to the attacker and to the target. Now, if the target should click on that link that I send, and his or her account is also opened on that same website, now immediately you click on that link I send, it will automatically change the password of that person's account to the password I set on my own account. That is an example of a CSRF attack. Now, an IDOR attack is an attack that happens in a way that most times when you visit a website, I don't know if you've noticed it, on the URL, probably when you click on a particular page, on the URL, you will see ID is equal to 1 or something. Now, that is the identification number for that particular page that you visited on your page. Now, an attacker could actually guess an ID. Maybe if he visits his own website now, if he visits his own page on his website, probably Facebook. Now, if you go to a particular page and Facebook gives you ID is equal to a particular number, you could copy that particular link and guess any other ID that could be on that website. Now, if the ID is correct, it will take you to that particular page. You might not know you might not know the owner of the page. So if those websites have not set security controls to actually counter those things, those websites can be vulnerable to those kind of attacks. So we have used BOP2 to intercept requests, manipulate parameters, and fuse inputs. Then we have scanning with manual testing to find logic flaws. Now we have practical checks. Try parameter tampering, force upload files, test for improper error handling, and check. So we also have session cookie flags. So we have the HTTP only, we have secure, we have the same site. So I would show you where you can see these session cookie flags. If any website you are visiting does not have these session cookie flags, you should know that website is actually vulnerable to some certain attacks. So we have network attacks and wireless security. So network attacks include ARP spoofing. So ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. So what the ARP does is that ARP is a protocol that maps your IP address to a MAC address, so that the system that the message is going to, we know that, okay, this is the MAC address I am going to, and this is the MAC address I am coming from. So that is what the ARP does. So the ARP spoofing attack is a way where you have to spoof a particular MAC address to show that the MAC address that the information should come to is your particular MAC address. You understand? So we have DNS poisoning also. Then we have man-in-the-middle attack. So we have bypass. Now, practice in a lab with VLANs and isolated Wi-Fi setup. So we have wireless testing also. So these are the different encryption. Whenever you connect your hotspot to your Wi-Fi to any hotspot, these are, I think this WP was the first generation wireless encryption. I think the one we are using now, the latest one now, is WPA3. So that is what helps you to keep your connection encrypted. That is what helps you to keep your connection to your wireless connection encrypted. That is why they cannot just break your password that easily. That's one of the reasons. So then we have AP detection and clients as isolation. So use tools like, we have aircrack NG, and other tools like that. So social engineering and physical security. Now, social engineering exploits human behavior. I think we talked about that. So we also have baiting, using USB drops and tailgating into facilities. So baiting For instance, when there are some attackers or some hackers that they use the USB drop technique. Now, what is a USB drop technique? All the things you need to actually penetrate a system. You've installed everything on your flash drive. You can just walk randomly to a place and you just drop your flash drive on the floor. And because of curiosity, as human beings, we're always curious to want to know things. You just pick up flash drive. Who owns this flash drive? You just put it into your system. Before you know it, just like they will say, before you know then anything, anything your eyes see, you take it. So the next one is tailgating. So tailgating is just like tailing someone. So following somebody into probably a secured room where normally you need a certain level of authentication to enter those kind of facilities. That's what we call tailgating. So now design tests carefully with explicit consent and clear boundaries. So simulated phishing campaigns should include user awareness training and agreed remediation steps. So these are some of the remediation steps to social engineering, USB drops, tailgating. These are. Then we also have record metrics. So click rates, credential submissions, and the time to report to measure the effectiveness of security awareness program. So you need all these also to be able to keep track of your security awareness program. So we have reporting, remediation, and responsible disclosure. So an effective report includes executive summary. That is why the template I give you guys for your project has all these things, because it is very important that you get used to that template, because that is a standard template for a project. So it should include executive summary, your scope, the methodology, that is your findings, then your risk ratings. So we also have proof of concept, which is your screenshots. So we have impact assessments, we have remediation recommendations, or what you recommend for how the vulnerability can be fixed. Then we have appendices with raw data. So now use a risk rating model. So the risk rating model in cybersecurity, we have the low, medium, high, and critical. So now you should be able to determine that this particular vulnerability that you've discovered, does it have a low rating? Is it that serious? How serious is that vulnerability? That's your rating. So coordinate disclosure. So agree timelines with organizations for patching and public disclosure. So for third-party software, followed vendor disclosure policies. So there are so many things you need to actually be able to understand to be an ethical hacker. It's not just about hacking. You need to understand the laws behind it so you don't just land yourself in trouble. So we have mitigations and defensive controls. So general mitigations, we have network segmentation, segment your network. We have least privilege, that is, in an organization, people should only have access to what they need and what their work entails. Somebody in accounting department does not need to have access to the data of those in the customer care department if it's not necessary. So multi-factor authentication, always apply multi-factor authentication. I know if I ask most of you now, your WhatsApp is not even, you've not applied multi-factor authentication on your WhatsApp, not to talk of other accounts. So always apply MFA. It's very important. So validation and parameterized queries, secure configuration baselines, and timely patching. So always make sure you patch vulnerabilities on time. Then we have monitoring and detection. So deploy EDR. EDR is endpoint detection and response. So we have centralized logging using SIM tools. So we have IDS, intrusion detection system, and IPS. And also then for scans, use threat hunting to find indicators of compromise. So use threat hunting to find indicators of what? Of compromise, which is known as IOCs. So with some of the hosting tools that I told you, where you can actually the tools you can actually use for threat hunting to stay ahead of attacks. So secure SDLC. So integrate security checks into development with static analysis, dependency scanning, and automated testing pipelines. So we have glossary and further reading. So we have the CVE. So now the CVE is known as common vulnerabilities and exposures. Now it is a public list of known vulnerabilities. Now, just like the way the Meta framework is, we have the CVE list. Now the CVE list contains a list of all possible vulnerabilities, be it on websites, be it on network. It will tell you all the possible vulnerabilities that your network could have that you need to actually work on. If not, you would be vulnerable. So we have exploits. So a code or technique that takes advantage of vulnerability. So when there's a vulnerability, the way they actually make use of vulnerability is by exploiting it. So how do you exploit a vulnerability? For instance, I made example of a torn net in your house when we started this training. I said if you have a torn net in your house or your window is torn, now, it could actually be a vulnerability for you because a robber could exploit that by coming in through that stunned net. So the exploitation is the robber trying to know how he or she can make use of that your vulnerability. That is exploitation. So we have payload. Now the component delivered for successful exploitation. So payload is just like the scripts that you make use of or the malware that you make use of. So we have the OWASP top 10. So this is a priority list of web application security risks. So the OWASP top 10 has to do with the top 10 vulnerabilities that websites actually contains that you need to patch up. So we have the sample penetration test summary template. So this is a report template. So first you have your executive summary, that is your high-level findings. You have your scope, then you have your methodology, you have your findings, then you have your remediation, then you have your appendices. So let us go and do some simple practicals. And come, I want to set up this Metasploit table so that if you guys will be using it, you will be taught how to go about this. But for now, I just want to test it so that I can use the IP address for what I want to do. Okay, you know what? Let's just do a reconnaissance on this IP address. So let's assume, okay, let's first do some other reconnaissance. So some of the reconnaissance tools, so we have dig, right? Now dig helps you to check the IP addresses of that particular domain. So I could say dig, let's say example.com. Now you can see it gave me some information. So this is the public IP of this now. Let's try it for Google. If I say dig, so what it helps you to do is that it just helps you to translate the domain into an IP address. So look at this IP address now. If I paste this IP address now, if I paste this IP address now on my browser, if I paste this IP address now on my browser, you notice that it took me to Google. Can you see it took me to Google? So that's to show you that that is one of Google's public IP address. So now this is part of your reconnaissance. So this IP address now is what you now perform other reconnaissance on to know which servers or which ports are open in that IP. So the other one we talked about who is. So you can say who is okay, let's use example.com. So now this gives you information about the server they are using that is hosting so you can see the server that is hosting wait, let me see. So you can see the server that is hosting this example.com. That's the server that is hosting it. You can see updated date. This is when they updated their certificates, their SSL certificates. So this was the creation date of this website. You can see 1995. That was when this website was created. So when their certification will expire or when those that buy domain, for you to own a domain name, do you know that they pay yearly for it? Some of you might know that. So this is when this one will expire before they will actually have to update it. So these are some general informations about that domain. So that's for the who is. So the next one, let's use, I think we used sublisted last time. So that one, I don't think you don't know the ping command. The ping command is just for you to check if that particular website is active. So now we're making use of the nmap. So we can you can either use the command line or we use the GUI. So let's make use of the GUI. So I want to perform reconnaissance on this metasploitable. Let's look for Zenmap. Look for Zenmap. All right, so this is the GUI version of nmap. So what you can just do is to paste your IP address, the IP address that you want to scan. So if I just click on scan, so it scans that particular. So can you see now? targets were specified. Maybe we scan something else. Let me scan my uh let me scan my IP address. So you can see now, let's go and use this command. Let's use this command instead so that we use nmap command. Let's use the command. So this is the command here. Let it give us the information here. It's scanning. So as you can see now, you see it discovered open ports. You see the ports, some of the ports it discovered. This is port 902 over TCP. See port 16992 over TCP also. So these are some of the informations that you would need before you perform your attacks. So these are some of the information you need. You'll be able to realize if these open ports are ports that you could actually pass through. So you could see some other ports, port 445, port 135, we have port 139 here. Do you understand? So this is how the scanning of nmap works. So it helps you to know ports that are open on that. So that's that. Let me stop this now. So that's about reconnaissance. So let's do let me show you a simple website, a simple website penetration test that you can always perform and make requests, report on. Okay. So to perform the penetration test on the websites, for you to just know these vulnerabilities, we're making use of we're making use of ZAP Proxy. So this is the tool, use of ZAP Proxy. Wait for it to open. All right. And skip this one for now. So you see what I did? You just click on this run automated scan option here, this blue one. You click on it. Then this is where you paste the URL you want to attack. So this is the one we want to attack. Then you just scroll down and click on attack. So once you click on attack, it does the work for you. So it is scanning through the website to see the sites that are the vulnerabilities in that website that needs fixing. So it is still scanning. While it's still scanning, you can always head over to alerts. Now this alert is telling you the vulnerabilities that it has found so far. If you look at this place now, you see that it's saying it has found 8 vulnerabilities so far. So these are the different vulnerabilities it has found so far. So if I click on any of those vulnerabilities, if you come here, you see it tells you the risk level. So if I click on any of those vulnerabilities, you see here it tells you that the risk level is medium. Now you see the description of that particular vulnerability. This is what that vulnerability is all about. It tells you the description. And if you scroll down, it gives you the solution to that particular vulnerability. That goes for all the vulnerabilities that are here. So it tells you everything you need to know about that vulnerability, gives you the solution, gives you the description of what this is cross-site domain here. So it gives you the description and it gives you the solution. So now what you can do for you to give a simple report about this, I've done a similar project. So I'll just be showing you how it went. So now if you can see my screen well, basically like this. All right. So now this is a vulnerability report on OWASP, this particular link. So the link to the website, you put the link. Then now the vulnerabilities that found, I think the total it found is 8. So the first thing you do will be the name of the vulnerability. So what is the name of the vulnerability here? Now this is the name. You copy the name of this vulnerability. That is going to be the name of the vulnerability. Then where it is found. So the link where it is found. So what it does will be your description, which is the description that you have here. So what it does will be your description. While your solution, it's already there also. So if you scroll down, you see the solution. Then you also copy the solution. So the next thing you do, you take a screenshot of that particular page. So the same thing you do for the next vulnerability also, the third vulnerability, so you're able to cover all the vulnerabilities that you found. So you can see the alert here is giving us 10 vulnerabilities. All right, so that is what we have for today.